fellow crocheters, it's Janet with bddpatterns.com. Thank you so much for stopping by today. In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to crochet a beautiful dress in just a day. Are you excited? I am. Let's go. All right, let's talk about what we're going to need to crochet this beautiful and easy dress. The yarn that I used here is a worsted number 4. It's by Lily, Sugar and Cream, and I am demonstrating the pattern in a size small today, and for that you will need 1 cone. For the rest of the sizes, I would have 2 on hand. And the color is Coral Rose. So again, 1 for the small size, I would have 2 for the other sizes. Some sort of way to keep track of rows, that's very important, because when you're crocheting such a long item, you want to make sure that your first and second panels have the same rows. This is my favorite row counter. It's a ring row counter. I wear it every day. I forget to take it off half the time, so if I'm working and then I go out, I look down, I'm like, oh, I've got my row counter ring on. So it's kind of like just a stable piece of jewelry, but it works great. If you don't want something like this, then you can either use one of those digital roll counters, a tally marker like they have for sports, or a good old-fashioned piece of paper and a pencil. You will need a 6mm or J crochet hook. You will need a bent yarn needle. These are the best. If you don't like bent yarn needles and you want to use a straight needle, go right ahead. I just prefer these. These are my favorite ones because I love the container. It keeps them all nice and together, and I never lose them. You will need a tape measure. You will need at minimum 6 stitch markers. I would have more than that on hand, because with a dress that is, if you're going to crochet it in a longer length, you're going to need these to like secure the panels so that when you're sewing the seams, everything adds up. But at minimum, again, 3. Okay, you will need a yarn needle threader. This is my favorite one. It's made by Clover. It has a bit of a finish, a vintage, excuse me, I can't talk today, a vintage finish to it. I absolutely love this, but this one is very well made. It's very durable. 2 safety pins, a pair of sharp scissors, and these are my favorite ones. This is a scissor necklace. I use this every day, and this way I never lose my scissors. They're always around my neck. And last but not least, a crochet ruler or a gauge swatch ruler. All right, let's talk gauge. One of the reasons that you can literally crochet this dress in a day is because we're using a larger than recommended hook for the yarn. I wanted this to be more open, summery kind of feel, and because of the yarn itself. So let's make our gauge swatch. The stitches are simple. You just need to know a single crochet stitch, excuse me, and a double crochet stitch. So we are going to chain for this gauge swatch. I'm going to go ahead and chain 18. You can chain whatever you want, but it does have to be, you know, larger than this. And there's another reason that I'm chaining 18, because I'm going to work with this throughout the pattern. I'm not going to work the same amount of stitches that you are, but I'm going to show you how I'm basically making a doll size one. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's chain 19, because I want 18 working stitches. And my first 2 rows are going to be single crochet. So again, there's only 2 stitches here, single and double crochet. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Yay. Okay. After you've got your chain, we're going to lay down the first row that we would when we start the pattern. This pattern is worked from the neck down. The first row that we're going to do for our gauge swatch, and it's also going to be the first row that we do for our dress, we are going to single crochet into the back bar of each chain stitch. Okay, let me show you where this is at. This is at the top. Normally, if we were just crocheting along like we have before, or if you're new and you've never seen this technique, this is probably how you learned. You either inserted your hook here or here. Well, we're going to do what we always do, which is skip the first chain, because that one doesn't count. That's our turning chain. And we're going to go into this next back bar. And because I chained 19, I will be working across 18 stitches. So I'm just going to insert my hook into the back bar, and I'm going to do a single crochet. All right, then I'm going to do that again. Just work my single crochet into the back bar, and I'm going to do a couple of these, and then I'm going to turn you loose, and you're going to finish the row on your own. But as you can see, what happens when you do it this way is, see that? The bottom, which normally would look like just like a bunch of loops, if you do it the standard way, now you have literally stitches that the same stitches that you have on your continuing rows. And I absolutely love that. So go ahead and continue to do, if you're working my number, I again have 18, so you want to have 18 total single crochet stitches, which are into the back bars of the original chain stitches. All right, we are going to chain one and turn, and that completes our first row of single crochet into the back bar of each chain stitch, with of course counting the first one as the turning chain. Now please just put a row of single crochet stitches into every stitch. So again, at the end of this second row, you should have 18 single crochet stitches. Now we have 2 rows of single crochet stitches. We are going to chain 2, and we're going to turn. Going forward, our next rows are going to be simply 18 double crochet stitches. And in this particular pattern, this turning chain from the previous row counts as the first stitch. So what does that mean? Well, that means that normally we would go into this stitch right here, but we're not going to do that. We've already completed a stitch of getting ready for, well, it's a double crochet stitch. So now we're just going to yarn over. We're going to skip that first stitch, and we're going to go into the second stitch and double crochet. And then we are going to double crochet in the remaining 17 stitches. So now we have, and let me just show you again how this works. Right here you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Okay, go ahead and put your rows of double crochet to the very end. And again, that should be 18 total, including this turning chain from the previous row. All right, here we are, excuse me, at the last stitch, which is stitch number 18 of this double crochet roll. So we're just going to go right into that stitch. We're going to do our normal double crochet. We're going to chain 2, and we're going to turn. Okay, so just to show you, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. All right, so we chained 2 on the previous row, which again counts as our first stitch. So that means that we have to skip this stitch And we have to continue along in each stitch again to give us 18 double crochet stitches. Now, when you get to the end, you'll see here, this is actually the turning chain from the previous row. So we're not really going to have a stitch per se like we do right here, because that's stitch number 17, but we need to go with a double crochet into the top of our turning chain. So after you get your 17 stitches, we'll meet at the end of this row and I'll show you how to handle that last double crochet stitch. Okay, I just completed 16 double crochet stitches, and this is row 4 of my gauge swatch. And so I'm now going to go into the 17th stitch, which is right there, complete my double crochet. Now I have to get my 18th stitch in, and I'm going to go right into the top of that turning chain right there. See that? There we go. Sorry about that. Went off camera, but it's right there. Okay. So now I've done my double crochet into the top of the turning chain of the previous row. There we go. Okay, what I want you to do is these two rows of single crochet, we're not going to consider that for our gauge swatch. So we need to make sure that we have enough rows of this double crochet to get an accurate gauge. So I would say I would like at least 1 but 2 rows extended beyond this so that we can have an accurate measurement. So I'll meet you back there when you get your rows on. Okay, let's talk gauge swatch. You will need to grab your gauge swatch ruler in order to make sure that you've got the gauge right. So I ended up doing, if you remember, I said I wanted to do 2 rows at the beginning just to do that, but we're not counting these 2 rows in our gauge swatch configuration. But I ended up doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, but I am measuring at the base of the double crochet row to look at our measurements and make sure that my gauge is on target. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you is that we have 5 rows. So we have 5 rows over 4 inches. So in order to just check and make sure that we're on the same page, and this will come in because in the Britain pattern, I give you the rows, but I also tell you that this length is entirely up to you. So if you want to make a short dress, you just go right ahead. If you want to make a maxi dress that drags on the floor, whatever, you go right ahead. The length is entirely up to you, but if you know how many rows you need, then it's easier to calculate how many rows you're going to have to crochet in order to get to that final measurement for yourself. So I said we have 5 rows. So this is a field of 4 inches. So we divide 5 by 4, and that means that it's 1.25 rows per inch. So in other words, if I want to say make this, I don't know, 42 inches. Okay, so 42 times 1.25 is, that means I would need 52.5 rows. So I would just round it up to 53, or actually I'd take it back down to 52, because in this pattern, the first 2 and the last 2 rows are just single crochet. So the hemline of this pattern is just, you know, single crochet rows. So that's how you figure out the height or the length. We now need to look at the stitches. And again, over 4 inches, for this pattern, we have 9 stitches. So we take 9 and we divide that by 4, and we come up with a 2.25 stitches per inch. Why is that important? Okay, with this particular pattern, and I go over this in the pattern in here, also in the video. When you're making a dress, dresses are based on basically 2 measurements. Now we're making a custom dress for ourselves because this dress has no shape. It's just straight. But because I made it to the measurements in the pattern, it's kind of a bodycon dress. This yarn has up to 1.5 inches ease on it. So you can make it right to your measurements and you won't, you know, if you sit down, you won't rip your dress. That's my point. But there is one thing that you have to consider, and that is your 2 measurements of your hips and your full bust. Now, I say that this fits up to a full bust size of, this particular size is 34. And really what that is a 32-inch full bust with 2, you know, inches to give you ease. But when choosing the size for this pattern, you need to measure your full bust and you need to measure your hips. Please, please, please do you and me a favor, because I don't want an email from someone saying, this is not correct. You didn't configure the measurements. No. I'm configuring them. You just need to take the time to take the measurements. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't do that. Ready-to-wear sizes are completely different than custom sizes. Here's the measurements that you're going to have to take, and I'm going to tell you how to take them. First of all, your full bust. You can see from this photo here, it's just simply around the fullest part of your bust. Now, you should do this 3 times for accuracy. Don't pull on it and make it too tight, or don't just let it go loosey-goosey. Just make it that it fits around, and then you write that measurement down. Then you take your hip measurement, and that is not at the top of your hip, but it's further down, as I've got here in this photo. And again, that's all the way around, and that measurement should include your buttocks, okay? Because if it doesn't, again, you're not going to be able to sit down. So just take that measurement the same way, take it 3 times, and then write down the biggest one. The length, it's determined from the shoulder down. So once we get to the body portion, we're just going to crochet it till we reach the desired length. So let's get started. First of all, this pattern is an easy pattern, and that's the rating that I've given it. Here's the overview. This is what the dress looks like in a schematic. It's crocheted flat with just 2 pieces. It's worked from the top down, and the top starts with the sleeves and the yoke, and then you do the body and the hem, and then you sew up 2 side and underarm seams. There is a slit in here, so if you don't want the slit, you can just sew up 2 seams. We already went over the gauge, but this is the page that includes the pertinent information. And as you can see, there are links to all the things that I use in the video and to make the pattern. It's important to note, and I touched on this earlier, that you have to take a couple of measurements in order to make this pattern work. You cannot just go by a size that you wear in clothing. That will not work, because size charts for each manufacturer are completely different. So we've got our own little size chart going on here. Step 1. As I said earlier, this pattern is worked from the top down. So the first thing that you're going to do is work the yoke and the sleeves. So you want to chain, and again, this is for the size extra small, and it fits up to a 32-inch bust. So what you're going to do is you're going to chain 43, all right? And then after you chain 43, you want to single crochet into the second back bar from the hook, and I showed you this earlier, and then single crochet into the remaining stitches, chain 1, and turn. Now you should have 42 stitches, and those are the stitches for this size that you're going to be working on. This is a very basic pattern. There's no shaping involved into it because there's very little ease or room in it. It's designed to be more of kind of like a bodycon fit, but without all the hassle of making a waist and a bust and all that other stuff. So I think you're gonna love it. All right, once you get past the 2 rows of single crochet, the first 2 rows, the third row, you're going to lay down a row of double crochet. And as I talked about in the stitch and gauge portion of this tutorial, the first stitch is the turning chain of 2 from the previous row. So once you get going into the third row here, you would chain 2 at the end of row 2, and then going into row 3, you're going to have to skip that first stitch and then double crochet into the remaining stitches. So that means for the pattern that the first stitch is the turning chain, and so now you would have 41 remaining double crochet stitches to the end of the row, and you're always going to chain 2 with this particular pattern at the end of a double crochet row, and you're always going to chain 1 at the end of a single crochet row. All right, step number 2. At the end of row 13, you need to place a stitch marker into the third stitch from the right hand side and the third stitch from the left hand side. Okay, and that is going to mark our sleeves and our yoke, and it's also going to mark the beginning of the body. Once you have those marked, before you turn, okay, I want you to place another stitch marker into the center of that panel, and that will mark the right side of your dress. All right, so I'm going to show you how this works. You're going to fasten off once you've gotten your 13 rows, or if you're following along with the pattern, whatever size you're working on, however many rows, once you've got your sleeve and yoke portion done, then we're just going to fasten off. It's very easy to do that. Okay, we do not have to worry about the tail on this particular portion of the pattern. So here's how this should look. You've got a stitch marker that is into the third stitch from the right edge as you're looking at it. You've got a stitch marker that is into the third stitch from the left edge, and you've got a stitch marker in the center, and this means that going forward, this is the right side of your dress. Okay, to make the body, you're going to need to turn your dress sleeve and yoke panel over, and now you're working into the back or the wrong side of your dress. Now we're going to join our yarn into that first stitch marker stitch. So go ahead and make a slip knot, and then insert your hook right there and pull the slip knot through that stitch. Okay, you won't need the stitch marker anymore and it'll just get in the way, so go ahead and take that out. Okay, and if you do, if you're, if you have a little mishap or whatever with the hook and the yarn, that's okay. You can see right here, it's very easy to see it's the third stitch from the edge. All right, so we've got our stitch, we've secured our yarn, and now we are going to chain 2. Don't make that tight, guys. Don't be a tight crocheter. Just don't do it, please. All right, so we've got 2, a chain of 2, which again is going to count as our first stitch. So now we need to crochet double crochet stitches into the next stitches that are including and in between our stitch markers. So we've got our first one, And I'm just going over the tail right now. It's not a problem, no big deal at all. Okay. I have a, you'll have to excuse me if I seem a little out of sorts. I'm not. It's just that I have a lot of stuff on my demo table here, and I'm trying to fit everything in and still show you guys what's going on. Okay, so we're just going to double crochet, continue on with your, you will be now working over 38 stitches. So continue double crocheting, and then just go ahead and stop when you get to that stitch marker. We'll talk about that, but just continue on and we'll meet back when you're ready. As I said before, I was going to stop right before this last stitch, so I know I have one more so I can safely remove my marker. And again, it's not like we're working, you know, leaving that many stitches unworked. And just go ahead and single crochet into that very last stitch. So for you, you will now be working, we've subtracted 4, we've subtracted 2 on each side, so now you're going to be working across 38 stitches, and all you're going to be doing now is simply double crocheting. I'm going to show you how to repeat one more row, and then you're going to make your dress as long as you like. All right, so here we're going to chain 2 before we turn from our first body row. Now we're going to turn. Now remember, this is the first stitch, so we have to skip this stitch here. If we were doing anything else, we would normally be going into that stitch. But today, this is already done for us, the first stitch. So you're just going to continue on with your pattern of double crochet rows. Double crochet stitches in this case, because we haven't completed the row yet. But that's all you're going to do. And then we'll do that last stitch together. Remember, it's the turning chain, so, well, in this case it's the last stitch, but we'll do the last stitch together, and then you're going to crochet your little heart out until you get the length of double crochets that you want for your beautiful Catalina dress. Before you fasten off, at the end of your last row of single crochet, take your yarn and measure up the side and across the underarm sleeve twice, and this will leave the perfect length of a tail to sew the underarm and side seams. Then you need to fasten off. Repeat step 1 to make another panel. On the second panel, if you're going to put a slit in your dress, cool, I suggest it because it fits so much better. But if you're going to put a slit in your dress, you don't have to worry about that long tail on the second panel because you'll be joining the yarn up, so you won't need that long of a tail. Let's put this all together. With the right sides of your dress together, in other words, when you look down at your dress and everything's lined up, the wrong side will be facing you. Lay your panels on top of each other. Measure 4 inches from the sleeve edges toward the center on both sides. This is going to be your shoulder seam. Then take your safety pins and place those into the stitches that are 4 inches from the edge, and then sew up your shoulder seams with a whip stitch. Now, because you've done a little sewing, please make sure that your hems, sides, and underarms are still lining up evenly. Then you'll want to whip stitch your longest side seam together, which the step that we're looking at right now, that would be the one that is on the left and up. Of course, you're going to go under the arm for those 2 stitches. Now you need to measure where you want the slit to start from the top, or if you're going down, end. Then you just need to simply join your yarn and sew the 2 panels together at that point. Now I will give you a tip here. When you're sewing those 2 panels together, at that point up to the underarm sleeve, just make sure that those first couple of stitches, you might want to do that just twice. Don't pull too hard, but just make sure that you do it twice because that's what we call a stress point. Now you just need to weave your tails and turn your dress right side out. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for staying with me and making this beautiful dress. Would you do me a favor? If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you do make this Catalina dress, we'd love to see it. So please share across all of your social media accounts with BDD Patterns Catalina dress for the hashtag. All right, we'll see you soon.